He had survived ambushes in the dark, buried his wife in the rain, and raised a daughter alone with hands that once knew how to kill. Cole Maddox had made peace with the idea that the best parts of his life were already behind him. Then his best friend, the one man he trusted without question, set him up on a blind date with the one woman who should have been completely off limits. The woman who walked through that restaurant door didn't just rattle him, she dismantled every wall he'd spent 4 years building. What happened next didn't just change Cole's life. It nearly destroyed the only friendship he had left. If this kind of story hits different for you, the kind that keeps you up at night, the kind where real people make impossible choices, then you're exactly where you need to be. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you never miss what's coming next. Hit that like button if you're already hooked, and drop a comment telling me what city and country you're watching from. I genuinely want to see how far these stories travel. Now let's get into it. The alarm went off at 5:15, same as always. Cole Maddox was already awake. He lay on his back in the dark, staring at the ceiling the way he'd done every morning for the past 4 years. Not because he couldn't sleep, but because those few quiet minutes before the rest of the house came alive were the only time he allowed himself to just exist without purpose, without a task to complete or a role to fill, just a man and a ceiling and the sound of his own breathing. Then he heard it. The small, shuffling footsteps in the hallway, the pause outside his door, the soft knock that was really more of a tap. 3 times, tentative, like she was always slightly afraid he might be annoyed, even though he never was. "Dad? Come in, Em." The door opened and Emma Maddox, 8 years old and roughly the size of a question mark, appeared in the frame. Her hair was a disaster. She was wearing one sock. She had a stuffed rabbit named Gerald tucked under her arm, and she looked at him with those eyes, her mother's eyes, dark brown and too serious for a kid her age, and said, "I couldn't sleep." "You were asleep 20 minutes ago. I checked." "That was before." "Before what?" She thought about it. "Before I wasn't asleep anymore." He almost smiled. Almost. "Get in." She climbed up onto the bed and burrowed under the blanket beside him, and for a few minutes neither of them said anything. Emma stared at the ceiling too. Gerald the rabbit got tucked between them as a kind of neutral party. Outside, Seattle was doing what Seattle did in November, sitting in a low gray cloud like it had given up on sunlight entirely. The radiator ticked. Somewhere down the block, a car started and pulled away. "Dad," Emma said. "Yeah. Do you think Mom would have liked mornings?" Cole was quiet for a second. "Your mom liked mornings fine. She just didn't like the part where she had to be a person in them." Emma giggled. It was a small sound, but it filled the whole room. He got up at 5:40, showered, made coffee, made Emma's lunch, turkey and cheddar, no mustard, the crust cut off because she was 8 and he'd learned a long time ago to pick his battles. He listened to the weather on the radio the way his father had done, standing at the kitchen counter with both hands wrapped around his mug. By 7, he had Emma dressed, fed, and walking toward the bus stop on Kenmore Avenue. She talked the whole time. She had opinions about everything. About her teacher, Mrs. Halloran, who apparently had very boring taste in read-aloud books. About her classmate, Jalen, who had brought a lizard to school in his backpack and then pretended he didn't know how it got there. About whether Gerald the rabbit would be happier with a middle name. "What are you thinking?" Cole asked. "I'm thinking Gerald Theodore Maddox," Emma said, very seriously. "That's a lot of name for a rabbit." "He has a big personality." The bus came. Emma hugged him exactly once, hard, then climbed the steps and vanished into the interior without looking back. She never looked back. He didn't know if that was something to be proud of or something that quietly broke his heart a little every morning. Maybe both. He stood at the curb until the bus turned the corner. Then he walked back to an empty house. Cole Maddox had not always been a man who stood at bus stops watching his kid disappear. He'd spent 11 years as a Navy SEAL, 4 of them in specialized counterterrorism operations that he was still not legally permitted to discuss in detail. He'd done things in places that don't appear on most news broadcasts, alongside men who understood that some work had to stay in the dark to keep other people safe in the light. He'd been good at it. Not in the way that people mean when they say someone is good at their job. He'd been good at it the way some people are good at chess or surgery, with a kind of cold clarity that allowed him to function at full capacity in situations that should have broken him. He'd come home from all of it intact, more or less. What broke him was a Tuesday afternoon in a hospital parking garage. 4 years ago. A cerebral hemorrhage. His wife Lauren had been 33 years old. She'd had a headache for 2 days, hadn't thought much of it, and then she was gone in the time it took Cole to drive from their house to the hospital. He'd made it in 19 minutes. The nurse had met him at the elevator. He didn't remember much about the months that followed. He remembered Emma, mostly. The weight of her in his arms when she was scared. The way she'd started to understand in pieces that her mother wasn't coming back and that no one was going to be able to explain it in a way that made sense, because there was no way that made sense. He'd left the Navy 6 months after Lauren died, filed the paperwork, collected what needed to be collected, and came home to raise his daughter in a 3-bedroom house on the north side of Seattle. He worked security consulting now, corporate risk assessment, the occasional training contract. Things he could do largely from home or in short bursts that didn't require him to be gone for weeks at a time. It was a decent life. Quiet. Manageable. He'd gotten good at it. He just wasn't sure most days whether he was actually living it or just administering it. Marcus Webb called at 11:30 on a Wednesday. Cole saw the name on his phone and answered on the second ring. Yeah. You're always so warm on the phone, you know that? What do you want, Marcus? Marcus Webb had been Cole's closest friend for going on 15 years. They'd met during a joint training exercise and discovered they were fundamentally opposite people who nonetheless understood each other completely. Marcus was loud where Cole was quiet, expressive where Cole was contained, financially extravagant where Cole was borderline monastic. He was also, as of 3 years ago, one of the wealthiest men in the Pacific Northwest after the sale of his logistics software company had gone through at a number somewhere north of $3 billion. He was also recently divorced. I need to ask you something, Marcus said, and I need you to not immediately say no. That sentence alone makes me want to say no. Cole. What? When's the last time you went somewhere that wasn't Emma's school, the grocery store, or the gym? Cole thought about it, genuinely thought about it. I went to the hardware store last week. I'm setting you up on a date. There was a pause. No, Cole said. You didn't even... No, Marcus. You haven't been on a date in 4 years. I've been busy. You made a 12-year-old stuffed rabbit a dental appointment last month. Emma takes Gerald's teeth very seriously. Cole. Marcus's voice shifted, dropped into something that wasn't joking anymore. I'm not doing this to mess with your life. I'm doing this because you're one of the best people I know, and you are quietly disappearing, and I cannot watch it anymore. Just dinner. One dinner. The woman is smart. She's interesting. She's not going to expect anything from you. Just show up. Cole said nothing for a long time. Who is she? He finally asked. Someone I know, someone good. That's all I'm giving you. That is not a lot of information, Marcus. I know, say yes anyway. Cole looked out the kitchen window at the November sky, flat and gray, and entirely unhelpful. Fine, he said. One dinner. Oh, he told Emma about it that evening while she was doing homework at the kitchen table. I'm going out Saturday night, he said. Mrs. Okafor is going to come stay with you. Emma looked up from her math worksheet. Going out where? Dinner. With who? Someone Marcus knows. Emma studied him with that too old expression she sometimes got, the one that made him feel like she was reading a report on him. Is it a date? It's dinner. Dad, those aren't mutually exclusive. Where did you learn that phrase? Mrs. Halloran. She uses it all the time. Emma looked back at her worksheet. You should wear the blue shirt, not the gray one. The gray one makes you look like you work at a toll booth. Cole stared at her. Thank you, Emma. You're welcome, Dad. Saturday came faster than he wanted it to. He wore the blue shirt. The restaurant was in Belltown, the kind of place with good lighting and a wine list that required a map. Cole arrived 7 minutes early because arriving late to anything was physiologically impossible for him. The host led him to a corner table, and he sat with his back to the wall, old habit, non-negotiable, and looked at the menu without reading it and tried to remember the last time he'd been nervous about something that didn't involve bullets. He was nervous, which was ridiculous. It was dinner. He'd operated in environments with active hostiles, with unreliable communications, with equipment that failed. He'd made decisions under fire that he still thought about at 3 a.m. He could handle dinner with a stranger. He ordered water, looked at his phone, didn't look at his phone. He became aware of a shift in the room, not loud, not dramatic, just the subtle environmental change that happens when someone enters a space and the space responds to them. He looked up. The woman walking toward his table was tall, maybe 5'8", in a dark green dress that was elegant without trying to be. Dark hair pulled back simply. The kind of face that made you look and then look again, not because of any single feature, but because of the way everything worked together into an expression that was slightly guarded and completely present at the same time. Cole knew her face. It took exactly 2 seconds for his brain to fully process what his eyes were telling him, and those 2 seconds were the longest 2 seconds he'd had since the parking garage. She stopped at the table. He stood, because his mother had raised him right, and that particular reflex was beyond his control. They looked at each other. "You're Sienna Ashford," he said. Her expression didn't collapse into surprise. It did something more complicated, a quick, involuntary tightening around the eyes, a controlled breath. The look of someone who has just confirmed a suspicion they were hoping was wrong. "And you're Cole Maddox," she said, "Marcus's friend." Marcus's best friend, Cole said, which came out sounding more pointed than he intended. Sienna Ashford was 30 years old, the founder and CEO of Ashford Meridian, a global supply chain company that did something in the range of $4 billion in annual revenue. She had been named to every relevant business list multiple times. She spoke 4 languages. She had been married to Marcus Webb for 3 years and divorced from him for 8 months. Cole knew all of this. He also knew that Marcus had never, in all the weeks of building toward this dinner, mentioned her name. They stood on opposite sides of the table in a very nice restaurant in Belltown, and the silence between them was not the uncomfortable kind. It was the kind that happens when 2 people are both rapidly running the same calculation and arriving at the same uncomfortable result. "He didn't tell you," Cole said. "He didn't tell you either," Sienna said. "No." Another pause. She glanced toward the door, not longingly, just checking, the way anyone would when they're deciding something. "I could leave," she said. "I'm not going to make this weird by leaving dramatically, but if you want me to go, I'll go. No hard feelings." Cole thought about the empty house waiting for him, the too quiet kitchen. Emma's question that morning, she'd asked if his dinner was with someone nice, and he'd said he didn't know yet, and she'd said that was a fine answer. "Sit down," he said. Sienna looked at him for a moment, then she pulled out her chair and sat. Cole sat too. The waiter appeared. They both ordered water. Neither of them reached for the menu yet. "I want to be clear," Cole said, "that I don't know what he was thinking." "I do," Sienna said, then quietly, "I'm not sure it was a bad reason, just a strange one." "Okay?" "Okay," she agreed. There was another pause, shorter this time. "I should tell you," Cole said, "that I haven't done this in 4 years. Dinner, this kind of dinner. What happened 4 years ago?" "My wife died." Sienna was quiet for a moment. Not in the way people get quiet when they're searching for the right words to fill the silence. In the way people get quiet when they're actually sitting with what you said. "I'm sorry," she said. Not "I'm so sorry," not "That must have been awful." Just the simple, undecorated version. "What was her name?" Cole blinked. People almost never ask that. "Lauren," he said. "She sounds like she was real," Sienna said. "The way you said it." He didn't answer that. He didn't know how to answer it. But something about it settled in his chest differently than most things people said to him about Lauren, and he picked up the menu, and after a moment Sienna picked up hers too. The waiter came back. They ordered. And somewhere in the space between the breadbasket arriving and the appetizers being set down, the conversation found its footing. Not easily, not smoothly, but the way conversations do when 2 people decide, against most available evidence, to try. Cole Maddox had survived things that shouldn't have been survivable. He'd buried his wife and raised his daughter and rebuilt something that counted as a life, even if it wasn't always one he recognized as his own. He had not expected, sitting across from his best friend's former wife in a restaurant he almost hadn't come to find himself listening to someone and actually wanting to hear what she said next. He had not expected that at all. Outside, Seattle rain tapped against the windows. Inside, two people who had every reason to leave sat across a candlelit table and didn't. The night stretched out in front of them, quiet and uncertain and entirely unplanned. The dinner lasted 2 hours and 40 minutes. Cole knew because he checked his watch when they finally stood to leave. Not because he was tracking the time, but because the number surprised him. 2 hours and 40 minutes felt like something that should have been accounted for somewhere, logged in some record that didn't exist. He'd spent longer in worse places with worse company, but he couldn't remember the last time 2 hours had moved like that. Without drag, without the low-grade awareness of wanting to be somewhere else. They walked out onto 2nd Avenue and stood on the sidewalk in the light rain, and neither of them moved immediately toward the parking garage. "I'm going to say something," Sienna said, "and I need you to know I'm not saying it to be charming." "Okay." That was the best conversation I've had in probably 2 years. Cole considered that. That's a long drought. I know. She said it without self-pity, just as a fact she'd already made peace with. I spend most of my time talking to people who want something from me. Investors, board members, journalists who've already written the story before they've asked the question. You just talked to me. You talked back. I know. It was strange. A pause. Good, strange. Cole looked at the rain on the pavement. I should tell you that I don't know what Marcus was doing tonight. I genuinely don't. But I'm not angry about it. Sienna tilted her head slightly. Are you surprised by that? A little. Me too, she said. They exchanged numbers in the way that felt less like an exchange and more like a practical decision. Two people acknowledging that the evening had gone somewhere neither of them had mapped, and that closing the door entirely required more certainty than either of them currently had. Cole drove home through the rain with the radio off, which was unusual. He normally needed noise to keep the silence from getting too loud. Tonight, he didn't need it. Mrs. Okafor had Emma asleep by 9. Cole paid her, saw her out, and stood in the hallway of his quiet house for a moment before going to check on Emma. She was flat on her back with Gerald the rabbit on her chest, one arm thrown wide in the loose, confident sprawl of a kid who slept without defenses. He stood in the doorway for a moment longer than necessary. He went to bed. He did not immediately fall asleep. Marcus called Sunday morning. So, he said. You didn't tell me it was her, Cole said. A pause. I know. Marcus, I know, Cole. I should have. I was going to, and then I thought if I told you, you'd say no before you gave it a chance, and You were probably right, Cole said, but you should have told me. Another pause. Longer. How did it go? Cole was quiet for a moment, standing at the kitchen window with his coffee. Emma was still asleep. The yard was wet and gray, and a crow was doing something aggressive to a pine cone near the fence. It went fine, Cole said. Fine. It went well, Marcus. Yeah. It went well. He could hear Marcus exhale, and there was something in it that Cole couldn't entirely read. Relief, maybe, but tangled up with something else. Something more complicated. She's a good person, Marcus said, quietly. She's a good person. I want you to know that. I know that, Cole said. I figured that out on my own. Yeah. Another beat. Good. Cole waited for more. More didn't come. We're okay? Cole asked. We're okay, Marcus said. Obviously we're okay. Call me this week. He hung up. Cole stood at the window a little longer, watching the crow defeat the pine cone, and tried to figure out exactly what he'd just heard in his best friend's voice. He couldn't land on it. He set it aside the way he'd learned to set things aside, consciously, deliberately, with the intention of returning to it later. Sienna texted first, Thursday afternoon, which was 4 days after the dinner, which Cole had been aware of without letting himself think too hard about what it meant. The text said, There's a bookstore on Capitol Hill I keep meaning to go to. Finney's. Have you been? Cole had not been. He texted back, no. Is that an invitation? 3 minutes. It's an inquiry, which can become an invitation depending on your answer. He smiled at his phone, which was an unusual thing for his face to do at a Thursday afternoon. Saturday morning, he typed. I have Emma until noon. After that works, she replied. Finney's Books occupied a narrow building on 15th Avenue that had clearly been several other things before it became a bookstore. The floors were uneven, the shelves went to the ceiling, and there was a cat of indeterminate age asleep on a stack of oversized art books near the front window. The place smelled like old paper, and the particular kind of quiet that collects in rooms where people have spent a long time not talking. Sienna was already there when Cole arrived, standing in the history section with a book open in her hands and her coat still on. She looked different than she had at the restaurant, less formal, somehow more actual. Her hair was down. She was wearing the kind of jeans that suggested she'd owned them long enough for them to know her. You're reading about the Korean War, Cole said. She looked up. You're 4 minutes late. Traffic on Eastlake. I know. I was just noting it. She closed the book, put it back on the shelf. Do you know anything about the Korean War? Some. More than most people? Probably. Good, she said. Walk with me. Tell me something I don't know. It was not a normal second, technically, meeting. They moved through the bookstore and Cole talked about things he'd read, and Sienna asked the kinds of questions that revealed she'd already thought about the subject and wanted to know where his thinking diverged from hers. She had opinions. She expressed them without performance, which Cole found unexpectedly rare. Most people either performed confidence or performed uncertainty. Sienna just had views and stated them, and was equally willing to change them when presented with evidence. They bought coffee from a place 2 doors down and sat at a small table and talked for another 2 hours. Cole looked at his watch at 2:30 and registered with mild alarm that he'd been gone nearly 3 hours and had told himself he'd be back before 2. I have to go, he said. You said that like you're surprised. I told Emma I'd be back before 2. Sienna looked at him, not with sympathy exactly, but with the focused attention she gave everything. How old is she? 8. What's she like? Cole considered this. She's like, if you took a regular 8-year-old and gave her strong opinions about historical accuracy and a rabbit named Gerald, you'd have Emma. Sienna smiled. Not the careful, controlled version from the restaurant. Something quicker and less managed. She sounds like a handful. She is. She's the best person I know. He said it without thinking, and then registered that he'd said it, and was obscurely glad it was out in the air instead of just in his head, where it usually lived. You should go, Sienna said. Yeah. He left. He drove home. Emma was at the kitchen table with Mrs. Okafor, building something complicated with Legos that appeared to involve both a castle and a rocket ship. You're late, Emma said. I know. I'm sorry. That's okay. She went back to her Legos. Was it the same person as Saturday? Yeah. Emma processed this information with the studied casualness of someone who had more to say and was choosing not to say it yet. Cole paid Mrs. Okafor, made a snack, sat down beside his daughter, and for a while they just built things together, and the afternoon was ordinary and complete. The weeks that followed were not a falling in love story, not the way that phrase usually gets used, fast and cinematic and obvious. What happened between Cole Maddox and Sienna Ashford was slower and less tidy than that, and because of it, more real. They texted most days, sometimes substantive, sometimes not. Sienna would send him a news article about military history policy, and he'd send her back a poorly lit photo of Emma's latest Lego creation with the caption she's calling this Fortress Commerce, and Sienna would respond she and I would get along. They saw each other twice more in October. Once at a gallery opening Sienna had been obligated to attend, and had offered him as an escape route. Once at a food market in the Fremont neighborhood where Cole had gone for produce and Sienna had appeared unexpectedly, and neither of them had left for 2 hours. Cole noticed things. He was trained to notice things, and he noticed that Sienna ate quickly and apologized for it once, explaining that she'd spent so many years eating at desks that slow meals felt like something she had to actively practice. He noticed that she had a habit, when she was thinking hard about something, of pressing her thumb into the inside of her opposite wrist. Not hard, just a small pressure, a private anchor. He noticed that she asked follow-up questions, always, not because she was performing interest, but because she actually retained what people said and wanted the next layer. He also noticed that she never, in all their conversations, mentioned missing her marriage. She mentioned Marcus occasionally, and always without malice, sometimes with what he recognized as a complicated kind of fondness, the kind reserved for people you've let go of, but don't regret having known. But the marriage itself she referred to the way people refer to something that happened to a previous version of themselves, with accuracy, but from a distance. He didn't ask about it directly. Not yet. He also, for the first time in 4 years, found himself thinking about someone other than Emma before he fell asleep. He noticed that too, and wasn't sure what to do with it, so he did what he'd trained himself to do with things he couldn't immediately categorize. He let it exist without forcing it into a box. It was a Sunday in mid-November when Emma finally met her. It was not planned. That was the thing Cole came back to afterward. It was specifically not planned, which meant whatever happened without the self-consciousness of a staged introduction. He'd taken Emma to the Science Museum downtown, which she'd been requesting for 3 weeks. They were in the geology exhibit, which Emma had decided was her favorite because of a particular display about underwater volcanoes that she found personally validating for reasons she hadn't fully explained. Cole was reading the placard on a cross-section of igneous rock when his phone buzzed. Sienna, are you anywhere near the waterfront? I'm walking and it's too cold for one person. Cole looked at Emma, who was pressing her face to the glass of the volcano display. He looked at his phone. He typed, Science Museum. We're here for another hour, probably. Emma's having a geological revelation. A pause. Sienna, I don't want to interrupt. Cole, you're not interrupting. You can come if you want. No pressure. Another pause. Longer. Sienna, are you sure? He thought about it for 2 real seconds. Cole, yeah. She arrived 35 minutes later, while they were in the space exhibit. Cole saw her come through the door and felt the particular tension of watching 2 separate parts of his life occupy the same room for the first time. Sienna saw him, crossed the room, and stopped a short distance away in the way of someone who understood they were arriving into someone else's space and wasn't going to assume they belonged in it. Emma noticed her. Emma noticed everything. Hi, Emma said. Hi, Sienna said. I'm Sienna. I know, Emma said. I'm Emma. I know, Sienna said. Your dad mentioned you. Emma tilted her head. What did he say? Sienna glanced at Cole, and there was something briefly amused in her expression. He said you have strong opinions about historical accuracy and a rabbit named Gerald. Emma considered this for a moment. That's accurate, she said, apparently satisfied. Then she turned back to the display she'd been looking at and said, without preamble, Do you know how long it takes for light to get from the sun to Earth? 8 minutes and 20 seconds, Sienna said, stepping up beside her. Give or take. Emma looked at her with the expression of someone who has just received unexpected points in a competition they were running internally. Most adults say they don't know. Most adults stopped being curious about it, Sienna said. That seems like a waste. Emma was quiet for a second. Cole was watching her face do the thing it did when she was calibrating, sorting information, updating her assessment of a person in real time. Then she said, You can come look at the volcanoes with us. They're in the other room. They're really good. I'd like that, Sienna said. Cole fell into step slightly behind them as they moved through the exhibit, and he watched his daughter walk beside this woman he was still figuring out, and listened to Emma explain underwater volcanoes with the authority of a tenured professor, and something shifted in his chest in a way that was quiet and alarming. And underneath both of those things, something close to relief. They got coffee after. The 3 of them, which Cole hadn't anticipated either. There was a place across from the museum that had hot chocolate, and Emma had requirements regarding hot chocolate, and Sienna ordered the same thing without being prompted, and Emma decided that was another point in her favor. They sat at a corner table. Emma talked, because Emma always talked, but she also listened. She was good at listening when she respected the person speaking, and she'd apparently made her decision about Sienna in the geology exhibit and was operating accordingly. Sienna answered Emma's questions with the same directness she brought to everything, not talking down, not performing warmth, just engaging with Emma the way she engaged with Cole, like someone whose thoughts were worth following. Cole sat with his hands around his coffee and watched them and said very little, which neither of them seemed to notice or mind. When they left, Emma walked between them on the sidewalk. Not holding either of their hands, she was too old for that with strangers, she'd decided, but positioned between them with the deliberate casualness of someone who knows exactly where they want to be. On the drive home, Emma sat in the back seat and was quiet for 2 whole minutes, which was unusual enough that Cole glanced in the rearview mirror. "She's not trying to be impressive," Emma said finally. Cole kept his eyes on the road. "What do you mean?" "Some grown-ups, when they meet me, they try to impress me. Like they want me to like them. She wasn't doing that." "No," Cole said. "She wasn't." "I like that better," Emma said. And then she went back to looking out the window and didn't say anything else about it, and Cole drove them home through the early dark of November. He called Marcus that night after Emma was in bed. "Hey," Marcus said. He sounded like he'd been awake for too long, which was his default state. "Emma met Sienna today," Cole said. "Not planned. We were at the museum." A pause on Marcus's end. "How did it go?" "Fine. Good. Emma liked her." Another pause. Yeah. Emma has good instincts." "She does." Silence on the line, the kind that meant something was sitting in it. "Marcus," Cole said. "Yeah. Are you okay with this?" "Actually okay with it. Not performing okay." A longer silence. "I arranged it," Marcus said. "I set the dinner up." "I know, but that's different from watching it become a thing." Marcus was quiet for long enough that Cole was about to say something else. "I was a bad husband," Marcus said. Not self-flagellating, not dramatic, just a statement he'd clearly turned over enough times that the roughness was worn off it. "I don't mean I was cruel, I wasn't. I was somewhere else for most of it. My head, my company, whatever the next thing was. Sienna deserved someone who was actually present, and I was in the same room but not present, and eventually she started to disappear. Like she was making herself smaller to fit into the space I was leaving for her. And I didn't see it until it was done." Cole didn't say anything. "So am I okay with it?" Marcus said. "Yeah, I think so. It's not nothing. I'm not going to pretend it's nothing, but I'm okay." "Tell me if that changes," Cole said. "I will." "I mean it, Marcus. You're more important than to—" "Cole, stop. You've been alone for 4 years and you're one of my best people, and if I can't handle this, then that's my problem to handle, not yours. Stop giving me an exit I don't want." A pause. "Okay?" Cole leaned back in his chair. "Okay. Good. How's Emma?" "She informed Gerald the rabbit tonight that he needs to learn patience." Marcus laughed, and it was a real laugh. And for a moment the line between them felt like it usually did. Two people who'd been through enough together that the complicated parts didn't require translation. The night Sienna told him about her marriage, the real version, not the diplomatic one, they were sitting on his back porch on a Thursday evening in late November. Emma was asleep inside. The temperature was low enough that they both had jackets on and were still slightly cold, and Cole had brought out 2 mugs of decaf that neither of them was drinking with much conviction. "Can I ask you something?" Cole said. "Probably." "What happened with Marcus?" "You don't have to answer." Sienna looked at the yard. Her hand was around her mug. "I was 25 when we got married," she said. "I thought I knew what I was choosing. I thought I knew myself." A pause. "I'd built the company from scratch. I had the kind of success that people write profiles about, the kind where everyone around you is confirming that you figured out something they haven't. And I still went home every night and felt like someone was slowly turning the volume down on me." "He didn't do it on purpose," Cole said. It wasn't a defense, just an acknowledgement. No, Sienna said. That almost made it worse. If he'd been deliberately unkind, I could have been angry and left. Instead, I spent 2 years trying to figure out what I was doing wrong. She stopped. I wasn't doing anything wrong. I just wanted someone to look up from whatever was in front of them and see that I was in the room. Cole looked at her. I see you in the room. She turned her head. The porch light was dim and did strange things to the shadows between them, and she looked at him for a moment without her usual composure. Not undone, but less defended. Tired in the way of someone who has been holding something up for a long time. I know, she said quietly. That's the thing that frightens me. Cole didn't push on that. He understood the fear well enough, the particular terror of wanting something after you've learned that wanting something and losing it doesn't kill you, but changes the shape of you in ways you spend years adjusting to. He reached across and covered her hand with his. Just that. He didn't squeeze, didn't pull her toward him, just his hand on hers in the cold November air. They sat like that for a while, not saying anything. Inside, the house was quiet. The refrigerator hummed. Gerald the rabbit was presumably sleeping in Emma's room in whatever dramatic position he'd been arranged in. Outside, it started to rain again. Neither of them moved to go in. Cole Maddox, who had survived things with guns and darkness and the kind of fear that has no civilian translation, sat on his back porch in the Seattle rain and held the hand of a woman who frightened him more than any of it, and for the first time in 4 years the silence that settled around him felt, unmistakably, like something other than loss. It felt like the very early edge of something beginning. He didn't say that out loud. He didn't need to. The rain came down and the night held them both, and inside the house his daughter slept without defenses, and Cole let himself feel the particular weight of the present moment without immediately reaching for a reason to put it down. That was new. He noticed it. He let it be. December came in cold and deliberate, the way Seattle winters do. Not dramatic, just a steady lowering of everything, temperature and light, and the particular ambient noise of a city that slows down when the days get short. Cole noticed the cold less than usual. He and Sienna had fallen into something that didn't have a clean name yet, which suited both of them. They saw each other twice a week, sometimes 3 times. They texted in the spaces between. Sienna had started sending him photographs. Not selfies, never that, but pictures of things she encountered during her days that she thought he'd find interesting. A street mural in Pioneer Square that referenced naval history. A headline about undersea geological surveys that she captioned Emma would approve. Once, a picture of a coffee shop menu that listed something called the Tactical Roast, with the caption, I think this was named for you specifically. He saved that one. He didn't examine why. Emma had asked about Sienna 4 times in the first 2 weeks of December, which Cole was tracking without acknowledging he was tracking it. Emma's questions were never direct. She came at things sideways, the way curious people do when they're trying to get information without appearing to want it. She'd ask things like, does Sienna work on weekends or does she like sushi because I feel like she would like sushi? And Cole would answer what he could and deflect the rest, and Emma would absorb it all with that unsettling quiet competence of hers and move on. Sienna came for dinner on the second Friday of December. It was the first time she'd been inside the house, and Cole had felt something close to self-conscious about it in a way that was new and slightly annoying. The house was not impressive. It was a 3-bedroom craftsman that he'd bought because the yard was decent, and the school district was good, and the closets were deep, not because of anything architectural. The living room had furniture that was functional and not particularly coordinated. The kitchen counter had a permanent cluster of Emma's school papers and art projects that Cole organized once a week, and Emma deorganized within 48 hours. There was a height chart penciled on the doorframe between the kitchen and the hallway that went back to when Emma was 3. Sienna walked in and didn't look around the way people look around when they're clocking a space. She just came in and stood in the kitchen while Cole finished the pasta, and Emma immediately positioned herself at the counter and began explaining to Sienna the specific structural problems with the Lego fortress she was currently mid-build. The north wall keeps collapsing, Emma said. I think it's a foundation issue. Have you tried reinforcing the base layer? Sienna asked. Emma stared at her. With what? Show me what you have. They disappeared into Emma's room for 20 minutes while Cole finished cooking. He could hear them through the wall, Emma's voice explaining things in her particular declarative style, and Sienna's voice asking questions. And then a silence that meant something was being built. And then Emma saying, "Oh," in the tone of someone who has just understood something they should have figured out earlier. They came back to dinner with dusty hands and what appeared to be a structural compromise that satisfied both parties. Cole served pasta. Emma ate half of hers and then started talking about a documentary she'd watched about deep-sea creatures, and Sienna asked about bioluminescence. And Cole ate his dinner and listened to the two of them and felt something so quietly full that he didn't have a word ready for it. After Emma was in bed, they sat on the couch with the television off and talked until 11:30. Sienna left without any of it being complicated. She put on her coat, he walked her to the door, she looked at him for a moment in the porch light and said, "This was good." And he said, "Yeah, it was." And she drove away, and Cole stood in the doorway for a moment before going back inside. He stood in the hallway. The house felt different than it had that morning. Not louder. It was still quiet. Emma was asleep. Nothing had changed in the room arrangement, but the quality of the quiet was different. Less like an absence and more like a pause. He went to bed and fell asleep faster than he had in months. Marcus called on a Tuesday. Not a text. A call, which in their communication shorthand meant something more deliberate. Cole picked up on the first ring. "Hey," Cole said. "Hey." A pause. "You got a minute?" "Yeah, Emma's at school. What's going on?" "I'm in New York through Thursday. Investor stuff." Another pause. The kind Marcus used when he was deciding how much of a thing to say. "I ran into someone here who knows Sienna, from her industry, and they were asking about her in that way people do when they're trying to get information without seeming like they're asking for it, and I—" Stopped. "And what?" "I didn't like it," Marcus said. "I didn't like the way this person was talking about her, making it sound like Ashford Meridian is in rougher shape than it is. Floated some story about board instability. I don't know if it's a play to devalue her company or just gossip, but I wanted to make sure you knew it's out there." Cole was quiet for a second, processing this on two levels simultaneously, the practical and the personal. "Does Sienna know?" "I texted her this morning. She said she's handling it. She said that like it ends the conversation." "It probably does." "I know. She's not someone who lets people into the operational side of her work." Marcus paused. That was one of the things that was hard, actually, in the marriage. She'd come home carrying whole crises and just absorb them, not share them. And I didn't know how to ask in a way that didn't feel like I was pushing through a door she wanted closed. Cole heard the texture of that, heard what Marcus was doing, not warning him exactly, but passing something forward, something learned the difficult way. "I'll talk to her," Cole said. "You don't have to. She can handle herself." I know she can. That's not why I'd talk to her." A beat of silence. "Right," Marcus said. "Yeah, okay." Something in his voice had shifted slightly, set not wistful exactly, but adjacent to it. "How's Emma?" "Emma has renamed Gerald's rabbit a middle name. He's now Gerald Theodore Augustus Maddox. That rabbit has more names than most senators. Emma takes legacy seriously." Marcus laughed, and it was mostly real, and they talked for another 10 minutes about nothing in particular, and when Cole hung up, he sat with the call for a while before getting up to do anything else. He asked Sienna about it that Thursday when they met for coffee. She was already there when he arrived. She was always slightly early, which he'd come to recognize as a control mechanism she probably didn't fully know she had. She had her laptop open and a half-finished coffee beside it, and she closed the laptop when he sat down, which was something he'd noticed she did deliberately. Full attention when she was with someone, no halves. "Marcus told me he talked to you," he said, skipping the preamble. Sienna's expression didn't shift into defensiveness. It went into something more careful, like she was choosing the framing before she committed to it. "He did." "Is it serious, the board thing?" "There's no board thing. There's someone who wants there to be a board thing and is trying to manufacture one in the press because they're interested in acquiring a portion of the company and think uncertainty makes the price more interesting." She said it flatly, like a weather report. "I've dealt with it." "Okay?" She looked at him. "That's it? Okay?" You said you've handled it. I believe you. Something moved across her face that she didn't quite catch before it was visible. A brief, unguarded moment of surprise, like she'd braced for something that didn't arrive. Most people want the full breakdown, she said. They want to demonstrate that they understand it. I don't need to demonstrate that, Cole said. And you don't need to perform competence for me. I already know you're competent. Sienna looked at him for a moment. She picked up her coffee cup and then put it down without drinking from it. Marcus used to want to understand everything I was dealing with, she said slowly, and I know he meant it well. But it felt like every problem became a joint project, and I needed some things to just be mine. Some things should just be yours, Cole said. I'm not asking to manage your life. I asked because I was in the vicinity of the information, and I wanted to know if you were okay. That's a different question. Sienna was quiet for a moment. I'm okay, she said. And this time it sounded less like the closed-door version and more like an actual answer. Good, Cole said. He picked up his coffee. Emma wants to know if you like sushi. Sienna blinked at the gear shift. What? She's been wanting to ask for 2 weeks, but she's been working up to it. I'm asking on her behalf. I love sushi. Good. She'll want to discuss favorites. Prepare yourself. Sienna looked at him with an expression that had something in it he couldn't fully categorize. Soft and slightly helpless, which was not a combination he'd seen on her before. She's going to be the best person, she said. She's already the best person, Cole said. She's 8. The rest of it she's just going to grow into, Bob. The dinner happened the following Saturday. Sushi, a place Emma had pre-selected based on online reviews she'd consulted independently, which Cole had discovered only when she presented her choice with documentation. It was a good dinner. Emma ordered for herself with confidence and introduced Sienna to her theory that salmon sashimi was objectively superior to tuna based on texture rather than flavor. And Sienna engaged with this argument with complete seriousness, and they went back and forth on it for 10 minutes while Cole ate his food and felt like he was watching something settle into place, the way a key does when you find the right lock, without force, almost by gravity. Walking back to the car afterward, Emma had reached up without preamble and taken Sienna's hand. Sienna had looked down at Emma's hand in hers with an expression Cole caught only for a second before she composed it, but what he'd seen in that second was something open and overwhelmed and quietly undone. She had held Emma's hand the rest of the way to the car. Cole had looked straight ahead and said nothing and let the moment be exactly what it was. He kissed her on a Wednesday evening in the second week of December. They were in his kitchen. Emma was at a sleepover at her friend Danny's house, which happened every few weeks and which Cole experienced as a slightly uncomfortable combination of relief and the particular silence of a house from which the most important person is temporarily absent. Sienna had come over at 7. They'd cooked together. Badly, in the sense that neither of them was a particularly accomplished cook, and the recipe Cole had pulled up had been over-optimistic about their collective skill level. The sauce had broken twice. There was a brief disagreement about heat management that was mostly joking, but had a small edge of actual friction underneath it because they were both people who had opinions about how things should be done, and occasionally those opinions were different. They'd eaten it anyway. It was fine. Not good, but fine, which was its own kind of success. They were cleaning up when it happened. Sienna was standing at the counter drying a pan, and Cole was putting something in a cabinet, and he turned around and she was right there, closer than expected, and they both stopped. There was a moment. He kissed her. She kissed him back. It was brief and somewhat graceless because of the pan she was still holding and the cabinet door he hadn't fully closed, and when they separated, she was looking at him with an expression he hadn't seen from her before, like the careful management she kept running had briefly gone offline. "Hi," she said. "Hi," he said. They looked at each other for another second. "The cabinet door is still open," Sienna said. Cole closed it. They stood in his kitchen, and neither of them said anything important for a moment, and the house was quiet around them, and Cole felt the specific weight of the present. Not with dread, not with the forward calculating anxiety of a man trying to protect against future loss, but just the present as itself, which was something he'd been working his way back toward for 4 years. What? Marcus showed up at his door on a Saturday morning in the third week of December. Cole saw his car in the driveway and felt something shift in his chest before he even opened the door. Not alarm exactly, but the particular attentiveness that came from knowing someone well enough to read their irregular appearances as information. Marcus looked like he hadn't slept well. He was dressed normally, nothing externally wrong, but there was a tightness around his eyes and a stillness in him that Cole recognized as the opposite of his usual state. Marcus in his default was motion, noise, forward momentum. This version was held in place. "Emma here?" Marcus asked. "She's at a birthday party until 3. Cole stepped back. "Come in." Marcus came in and went to the kitchen the way he always did, and Cole made coffee the way he always did. And for a few minutes it was the normal version, two people in a familiar space doing familiar things. But the space between them had a different quality than usual, compressed, somehow. Marcus sat at the kitchen table with his coffee and didn't drink it. "I want to say something," Marcus said, "and I want to say it once and then not have to say it again." Cole sat across from him. "Okay. I've been watching the two of you for 6 weeks. Marcus's voice was measured, not cold, controlled, like he was carrying something fragile and moving carefully. And I've been telling myself I'm fine with it, and mostly I have been. And then last week I saw Sienna posted something, just a picture from the museum, the science museum you guys went to with Emma, just some artifact in a case, and the caption was something small. I don't even remember what, but I knew it was from when she was there with you and Emma, and He stopped. Cole waited. "I felt it," Marcus said. "Not the way I thought I would. It wasn't jealousy about Sienna. Not in the way I'd expected. It was more like..." He pressed his thumb against the table. "I had that with her once, or I could have had it. I had the person and I was somewhere else the whole time, and I threw that away before I understood what it was. And seeing it on her face, even in a photograph, knowing that you're the reason," he exhaled. "It hit me different than I was prepared for." Cole looked at him. "Marcus, I'm not telling you to stop," Marcus said quickly. "I need to be clear about that. I arranged this, I wanted this, I genuinely..." His jaw worked for a second. "I want her to have that. And I want you to have that. I do. I'm not recanting anything." "Then what are you telling me?" Marcus was quiet for a long time. "I think I'm just telling you that it's real for me too," he said finally. "Whatever I'm carrying about it. I'm not asking you to fix it. I'm not asking for anything. I just..." He stopped, looked at his coffee. "I wanted you to know that it isn't nothing, for me. Because you're my best friend and I can't do this right if I'm keeping that from you." Cole was silent. He understood what Marcus was doing. He'd seen Marcus navigate a lot of things in 15 years. Business crises, personal losses, the specific chaos of being the loudest person in every room he entered. And what Marcus was doing right now was the hardest version of something Cole had always respected in him, telling the truth about the thing that cost something to admit. "I hear you," Cole said. "Yeah?" "Yeah." Cole looked at him. "And I need to ask you something, and I need an honest answer, not a diplomatic one." Marcus met his eyes. "Okay. Can you sit with this? Actually sit with it, long term. Not right now in this kitchen, but 6 months from now, a year from now. Can you be my brother and be okay?" Marcus was quiet for a long time. Outside, a car passed. The refrigerator hummed. Gerald the rabbit, relocated to the living room since Emma was out, shifted in his enclosure. "I don't know," Marcus said. "Not for certain." He looked up. "But I think yes. I think I'll get there. The thing I know for certain is that you being with her is not the problem. The problem is what I let myself become in that marriage, and that's mine to work through, not yours." Cole looked at him. "Okay," Cole said. "Okay," Marcus said. They sat with it. Two men who'd known each other long enough that silence wasn't an ending. But then Marcus looked up and there was something else in his face. Something that wasn't the confession he'd been building toward, but a different thing. something shifting underneath the first thing, a crack in the composure that was different in quality from the rest of it. "There's something else," Cole said. It wasn't a question. Marcus set his coffee down. "A few of the guys I worked with early on, before the company, before any of this, they've been in my ear lately. About her. About Sienna." He stopped. "In what way?" "The acquisition attempt I told you about, the person behind it." Marcus looked at him directly. "It's more coordinated than she knows. It's not just press rumor. Someone is running a deliberate campaign to pressure her board, and they're using some old legal paperwork from the early days of Ashford Meridian, documents from before the first funding round. There are questions about IP ownership on 2 of the company's core patents." He paused. "I only found this out 2 days ago. I was trying to verify it before I said anything." Cole went still in the way he got still when situations changed categories. "Does she know?" "I don't think so. Not the full scope of it." "You need to tell her." "I know." "Today, Marcus. Not when you finished verifying it. Today." "I know." Marcus rubbed his face. "I know. I didn't want her to think I'm still—" "She won't think that." Cole leaned forward. "Call her." Marcus looked at him. Something in the room had shifted from the personal into something operational, and Cole felt himself move into the cleaner, more decisive place he went when the situation required it. "Do you want me there when you tell her?" "No," Marcus said. "That's mine to do." He picked up his phone, set it down, picked it up again. "This is going to complicate things." "Yeah," Cole said, "it is." "Are you angry at me?" Cole thought about it honestly. "No, not yet." Marcus almost smiled at the "not yet." Almost. He called Sienna. Cole left the kitchen to give him the room and stood in the hallway of his house while his best friend's voice carried through the wall, low and careful and doing the work of something that should have been done 2 days earlier. Cole leaned against the wall with his arms crossed and listened to the cadence without the words and thought about the geometry of what was happening. 3 people connected by history and choice and the specific gravity of things said and unsaid. And now a new variable that was going to require all of them to recalibrate. He thought about Sienna. He thought about the way she pressed her thumb into her wrist when she was thinking, the way she'd looked at Emma's hand in hers, the way she'd said "that's the thing that frightens me" on the porch, and then held still while he'd reached across and put his hand over hers, like she was deciding whether to stay frightened or stay. Marcus came out of the kitchen 12 minutes later. His face had the look of someone who had just swallowed something difficult. "She knew some of it," he said, "not the patents. The patent thing is new to her." "How is she?" "She's—" Marcus stopped. "She's Sienna." She went quiet for a second and then she started asking questions and taking notes, and by the end of it she had 3 things she was going to do before end of day. "She'll handle it." "I know she will." Marcus picked up his jacket from the back of the chair. "She asked if you knew." Cole looked at him. "I told her you were the one who told me to call her today," Marcus said. They stood in the kitchen for a moment. "I'm going to tell her myself," Cole said. "Everything you just told me." "Yeah," Marcus said. "You should." Marcus left. Cole stood in the kitchen alone and thought about the fact that the day had started as an ordinary Saturday and had arrived here, at this specific intersection of loyalty and love, and the particular complication of people who care about each other having to navigate the same territory from different directions. He picked up his phone. He called Sienna. She answered on the second ring. Her voice was even, measured, competent in the way she always was when she was actively managing something. "Hey." "Hey," Cole said. "Marcus just left." "I know. He told me." "Are you okay?" A pause. "Just long enough to be honest." "I'm working through it." "I know. I'm not asking about the patents. I'm asking about you." Another pause. Different quality. "I'm okay," she said. And then, "I'm better that you asked." Cole leaned against the counter. Outside the window, the December sky was doing its usual gray nothing, and somewhere across the city, Emma was at a birthday party being the most interesting 8-year-old in the room, and Marcus was in his car carrying whatever he was carrying, and Sienna was at her desk with her phone pressed to her ear, working through something she would absolutely handle. Cole had spent 4 years being the person who held everything together by holding himself very still. He was beginning to understand, in ways he couldn't have predicted 4 months ago, that holding still and being present were not the same thing, and that the life he'd been administering was asking him, finally, to actually live in it. Then Sienna said, "Cole? Yeah. After I get through today, can I come over tonight? I don't need to talk about any of it. I just want to be somewhere that doesn't feel like—" She stopped, started again. "I just want to be there." Cole didn't have to think about it. "I'll leave the porch light on," he said. She exhaled, just slightly. "Okay," she said. "I'll be there by 8. She hung up. Cole set his phone down on the counter and stood in the kitchen of his imperfect house with the uncoordinated furniture and Emma's drawings on the refrigerator and the height chart on the doorframe that started when Emma was 3, and understood that something was shifting beneath the surface of all of this. Something that the warmth of the past weeks had been floating over without either of them fully naming. He didn't know yet what that thing was going to require from him. But he knew himself well enough to know that when it arrived, whatever it cost, he was not going to be the version of himself that looked away. He put on coffee for 8 o'clock. Then he went to pick up his daughter. Sienna arrived at 8:12. Cole heard the car in the driveway and had the door open before she reached the porch steps. She was still in the clothes she'd been wearing when she left work. Dark blazer, the kind of slacks that meant she'd been in meetings most of the day. And she looked like someone who had run a long race and finished it through sheer stubbornness rather than anything left in reserve. Not broken, just used up. She came inside without saying much. Cole took her coat. She sat on the couch and accepted the coffee he'd had ready and wrapped both hands around the mug and looked at the middle distance for a moment while he sat in the chair across from her and didn't try to fill the silence with anything. Emma was already asleep. She'd come home from the birthday party with a sugar crash and strong opinions about how unfair it was that parties had to end, and Cole had navigated her through a bath and into bed in under an hour, which he considered a personal best. "The patents are legitimate," Sienna said finally. Her voice was even, working through it even, not fine even. "There's a real question about who owned the foundational IP when I incorporated. My co-founder from the early days, we parted ways before the first funding round. It was not a clean split, and he signed documents, but the documents were not as airtight as my lawyers told me at the time." She paused. "He's been approached. Someone got to him and is funding him to bring a claim." "Can they win?" "Not if I get ahead of it." She drank some coffee. "My legal team spent today mapping the documentation. We have correspondence that establishes my sole development of the core algorithm, time-stamped, independent of anything he touched. It's a strong position. It's just going to be expensive and distracting, and—" She stopped. "And someone designed it to be," Cole said. "Yes." She looked at him. "Someone who knows how companies like mine work. You don't win this kind of fight in court. You win it before court by making the defense cost more than the plaintiff expects. And I intend to do exactly that." Cole nodded. He believed her completely. "Marcus should have told you sooner," he said. "He should have," she agreed. "But he told me today because you pushed him too." "So?" She set down her mug. "You already did the thing Marcus needed someone to make him do." Cole didn't say anything to that. Sienna leaned back and looked at the ceiling, not in frustration, just in the way of someone letting the tension run out of them slowly, like air from a tire. "I'm not going to lose the company," she said. It didn't sound like reassurance. It sounded like a statement of fact that she was also reminding herself of. "I've built it from nothing twice. If I have to build it from a harder position, I know how." "I know," Cole said. "But tonight I'm tired." She looked at him. "I'm just very tired of everything being a fight." He got up from the chair and sat beside her on the couch. Not close enough to crowd her, just present in a way that was physical instead of conversational. She leaned her head sideways against his shoulder after a moment, and they sat like that without talking, and Cole could feel the specific weight of her tiredness and the specific relief of someone who had been holding themselves upright all day, finally having somewhere to put some of it down. They sat there for a while. At some point, she fell asleep. Cole stayed where he was and didn't move. The weeks that followed were not easy, but they were navigable, which Cole had come to understand was about the best you could ask for from difficult periods. Sienna's legal team moved fast. The co-founder's claim, when it was formally filed in the second week of January, ran into a wall of documentation so thorough that the opposing counsel requested an extension within 10 days. The acquisition campaign quietly deflated, the way these things do when the manufactured pressure stops manufacturing. Sienna worked 14-hour days for most of January. Cole adjusted without making it into something it wasn't. He texted when he had something to say, and didn't when he didn't. He didn't ask for more of her time than she had, and when she surfaced, he was there without the kind of pointed presence that communicates "I have been waiting." He had learned that particular skill with Emma over years, the difference between being available and being awake. Emma noticed Sienna's reduced presence with the lateral intelligence of a child who understood more than she was told. "Is Sienna busy?" she asked one evening in late January. "Not sad, just accounting for information. She has a problem at work she's dealing with," Cole said. "It should be better soon." Emma considered this. Did someone do something bad to her company? Cole looked at her. "Why do you ask it that way?" "Because when people are that busy, it usually means something happened, not that they just have more to do." Emma was working on her homework. She said it without looking up, like it was obvious. "Will she be okay?" "She'll be okay. She's very good at her job." "I know." Emma erased something on her worksheet. "She told me that the best thing about being good at something hard is that when people try to make it hard for you, they don't realize how much harder you can handle." Cole stared at her. "When did she tell you that?" "When we were fixing Gerald's fortress. She said it about engineering, but I think it works for other things too." Cole was quiet for a moment. "Yeah," he said. "I think it does." Marcus called in late January on a Sunday morning, and his voice had a quality Cole hadn't heard before. Not distressed, but stripped down, like something had been removed from it. "Can I come over?" he asked. "Yeah." "When?" "I'm outside." Cole looked at his front window. Sure enough, Marcus's car was at the curb. Cole hadn't heard it pull up. "Come in," Cole said. Marcus came in and sat at the kitchen table with the slightly deflated posture of a man who had been sitting with something for long enough that it had started to cost him postural energy. Cole made coffee. Emma was upstairs. The house was in its Saturday morning state. Dishes from breakfast, Emma's shoes in the middle of the hallway where she always left them, a half-finished drawing on the kitchen table. Marcus looked at the drawing. "Emma's?" "Yeah, she's doing a series on deep-sea creatures. That's a vampire squid." Marcus looked at it for a moment. "It's pretty good." "Don't tell her that. She'll negotiate for art supplies." Marcus almost smiled. Cole sat down across from him with 2 mugs of coffee and waited. Marcus put both hands on the table. He had the look of a man organizing his words, the way you organize things before a long trip, wanting to make sure he had everything and hadn't left anything important behind. "I owe you something," Marcus said. Cole waited. "When I set up that dinner," Marcus said, "I told you it was because I wanted you to have something, a second chance, a life outside of the house, and Emma, and the quiet." He stopped. "That was true, but it wasn't the whole truth, and I've been sitting with the rest of it for months, and I can't keep sitting with it because it's affecting things." "Okay," Cole said. Marcus looked at him. "I also set it up because I thought, if Sienna found something real with you, then what happened in our marriage would finally have meant something, like it was a step towards something instead of just a failure." He said it carefully, with the precision of a man who has rehearsed this and is now departing from the rehearsal. "And that wasn't fair to either of you. I was using both of you to make peace with something I should have just made peace with on my own." Cole considered this. "I've known you for 15 years, Cole said. You don't do things for one reason. You did it because you wanted something good for me, and because you wanted something good for her, and because you needed something to mean more than it had. All of those things were probably true at the same time. That doesn't make the third one okay." "No, but it makes it human." Marcus looked at the table. "I told Sienna too, yesterday, the full version." "How did she take it?" "She was quiet for a long time, and then she said she'd always suspected there was more to it than altruism, and she appreciated that I finally said it out loud, and then she asked if I was okay." He shook his head slightly. She asked if I was okay. After I'd basically told her I used her situation as an emotional instrument. Because she's a fair person, Cole said, and because she doesn't have the energy for other people's guilt to become her problem. Yeah, Marcus exhaled. She's more generous than I deserved. Cole drank his coffee. What do you need from me, right now? Marcus looked up. I need you to tell me that I haven't ruined it. What we have, you and me. He said it bluntly, without the performance of casualness. Just the question, undecorated. Cole looked at his best friend, at the man who had been beside him in the worst year of his life, who had driven him to the hospital when Lauren died and sat in the waiting room for 6 hours without being asked, and had never once said the wrong thing in the aftermath because he'd had the intelligence to say almost nothing at all. The man who was also capable of complicated self-interest and motivational opacity and the specific blindness of someone so used to forward motion that he sometimes didn't see what he was running past. You haven't ruined it, Cole said. Marcus held his gaze for a moment, checking. You haven't, Cole said again. But I need you to be done carrying things sideways. If something comes up, about Sienna, about us, about how you're actually feeling about any of it, you come to me directly, not around the back. Yeah, Marcus said, deal. And I need you to actually work your stuff out, not perform working it out, actually do it, talk to someone. Marcus looked slightly pained. You mean a therapist? I mean a therapist. I've been thinking about it. Think faster. Marcus looked at him for a moment, and then something gave way in his expression. Not collapse, just release. The specific relief of someone who has been holding a weight and has finally been told they can put it down. Okay, he said. Yeah, okay. They sat there with their coffee in the January kitchen, and after a while Emma came downstairs in her pajamas with Gerald under her arm and assessed the situation with a glance. Are you two having a feelings conversation? She asked. Yes, Cole said. Did it go okay? Getting there, Marcus said. Emma nodded like she was satisfied with this report. She put Gerald on his table, poured herself a glass of orange juice, and sat down with them. And within 5 minutes, she was telling Marcus about the vampire squid illustration and the correct anatomical features she'd had to research. And Marcus was asking questions with what appeared to be genuine interest. And Cole sat with his coffee and felt something that had been slightly out of alignment settle back into place. It was a Thursday evening in early February when it all broke. Cole had known something was off since the middle of the week. A quality in Marcus's texts that was slightly too normal, slightly too much effort at normalcy. The kind of tone that in Cole's experience meant someone was managing toward a conversation they hadn't found the entry point for yet. He'd been wrong about what the conversation was. He'd assumed it was more about the Marcus situation, the therapy he'd been putting off, or something new about the Sienna legal matter. He had not assumed it was about him. Marcus came over on Thursday evening, again unannounced, but this time with a text that said, coming by 20 minutes, which Cole had learned was Marcus speak, for I need to say something and I can't do it over the phone. Emma was at Danny's house. Good timing, which Cole suspected was not accidental. Marcus sat at the kitchen table. Cole made coffee. Same configuration as before, but with a different atmospheric pressure. Cole could feel it in the way Marcus held himself, the careful stillness. The guys from my investor group, Marcus started, the ones I mentioned back in December. I remember. There are 3 of them that they've been asking questions. About you, about your background. He paused. About Sienna. Cole went still. What kind of questions? The kind that aren't innocent, Marcus said. One of them is Benjamin Harlow. You know the name? Cole ran it. Real estate, Seattle and Portland, known for buying companies that are stressed and restructuring them hard. That's him. He's also one of the people funding the co-founder's IP claim against Sienna. The pieces moved. He's been watching, Cole said. He's been watching, Marcus confirmed. And somewhere in the last 2 months, he's figured out that you and Sienna are together. And he's been asking people about your relationship with me, whether it creates a complicated dynamic, whether there's personal instability he can point to. Cole felt the cold clarity of something shifting from personal to operational. He'd felt it before in very different contexts. It was not a pleasant feeling, but it was a familiar one, and with it came the specific calm that he'd been trained into over years. Not detachment, just focus. He's building a narrative, Cole said, that Sienna's company is in turmoil, that her personal life adds instability, that the board should be concerned. Yes. He wants the board to push her out, or at minimum to accept a distressed valuation on a partial acquisition. Yes. Cole looked at his coffee. How long have you known about Harlow specifically? 3 weeks, Marcus said. He said it and then held Cole's eyes without looking away, because he was doing the version of honesty that costs something. I've been trying to get solid information before I said anything. I didn't want to come to you with half a picture again. 3 weeks, Marcus. I know. She's been fighting this in court for 6 weeks, and you've known for 3 that it traces back to Harlow. I know. He didn't flinch from it. I should have come to you sooner. I was trying to build the full picture, and I kept telling myself I needed one more piece, and then he stopped. I know. I'm telling you now. Cole sat back in his chair. He was not going to say the thing that was sitting at the front of his mind, which was that Marcus's timing, throughout all of this, had a pattern that Cole didn't entirely know what to do with. Not malicious. He didn't think Marcus was malicious, but there was something in the way Marcus withheld things until he'd processed them privately, something that looked like preparation but also functioned as control. Cole had seen it in the marriage, now that he was looking for it. He understood, in a way he hadn't before, what Sienna had meant on the porch when she'd talked about feeling the volume turned down on her. He didn't say any of that, not tonight, but he noted it and put it somewhere he'd return to. Does she know about Harlow? Cole asked. Her legal team has probably connected the name by now, but she doesn't know what I know about his pressure campaign on the board members specifically. I need to call her. I know. Before you do, Marcus leaned forward. I have something that helps her. Harlow and I go back. Not close, but back. We were in the same investment circles 5 years ago before I cashed out. I have emails, communications from that period where he explicitly described tactics he uses to manufacture board instability. Nothing illegal, but highly relevant to what's happening now. He put his phone on the table. I already sent them to Sienna's attorney 20 minutes ago, before I came here. Cole looked at him. You led with the thing that helps her, Cole said. I was trying to. Then say that first next time. Always say that first. Marcus nodded. Cole picked up his phone. He called Sienna. She answered on the first ring. Hey. Alert, not surprised. She'd probably been expecting a call at some point today. Her legal team moved fast. Marcus is with me, Cole said. He sent documents to your attorney 20 minutes ago. I know. Reeves just texted me. A pause. Harlow? Yeah. I suspected it was someone from that circle. I didn't have a name until 10 minutes ago. Her voice had the quality it got when she was moving through information fast, processing in real time. The emails Marcus sent are useful. Not decisive, but useful. They establish a pattern of conduct. What do you need right now? A pause, shorter than he expected. I need to be in my office for the next 3 hours, and then I need to not be in my office. Come here after, Cole said. Emma's at Danny's. I'll be up. Okay? Another pause. Cole. Yeah. Thank you for calling me directly instead of waiting. He heard, in that sentence, everything she didn't say. The contrast she was drawing without naming it. He felt it, but didn't comment on it. I'll see you at 11, he said. He hung up. He looked at Marcus. Marcus had his hands flat on the table and was looking at them. Something in his posture had changed since he'd walked in. He'd come in carrying something and he'd put it down, but putting things down doesn't mean you immediately stand straight. He looked like a man in the process of rearranging himself, which Cole supposed was what actually working things out looked like, as opposed to performing it. The therapy thing, Cole said. I'll call Monday, Marcus said. Call tomorrow. It's Friday tomorrow. Call anyway. Marcus looked at him. You're relentless. Former SEAL, Cole said. We don't have an off switch. Marcus picked up his coffee, which had gone cold. He drank some of it anyway. She's going to win this, he said. The Harlow thing, the patent claim. She's going to dismantle it. I know, Cole said. I need you to know that I didn't... Marcus started and then stopped. And when he started again, his voice had less management in it. I need you to know that nothing I did or didn't do was me trying to slow her down, or protect my position, or... Marcus, Cole said it quietly. I know. You're not built that way. I'm built in complicated ways. Everyone is. You're not vindictive. I know the difference. Marcus was quiet for a moment, then, do you think she does? Cole thought about Sienna, about the way she sat with information, turned it, assessed it without the heat of the moment distorting it, about how she'd asked if Marcus was okay after he'd confessed his complicated motivations. Yeah, Cole said. I think she does. Marcus put down his coffee mug. He sat with his arms on the table and he looked, Cole thought, like someone who was beginning, not finished, not healed, not resolved, but beginning, to put down something he'd been carrying long enough that he'd stopped noticing the weight. I should go, Marcus said. You don't have to. No, He stood, picked up his jacket. I have some calls to make, and I think I need to be alone with this for a while. He stopped, looked at Cole. Are we okay? Cole looked at him. The question was starting to become a pattern between them, and Cole understood that the repetition of it wasn't weakness. It was Marcus doing the maintenance work that he'd been bad at doing inside his marriage, and he was doing it imperfectly, and sometimes late, but he was doing it. We're okay, Cole said. We're always going to be okay. But Marcus, you should know that if something like this happens again. If you sit on information that affects Sienna for 3 weeks while you're working up to it, I know, Marcus said. I know. Make sure you do. Marcus left. Cole stayed at the kitchen table after the door closed and sat with the specific texture of the evening, the information, the weight of Marcus's disclosures, the particular way this situation kept generating new layers just when it seemed to be resolving. He'd seen operations like this in the field. You'd clear one room and the next would open onto something larger than you'd expected. The only reliable approach was to keep moving forward with clear eyes and not let the accumulation of it convince you that the whole building was uncleared. He cleaned up the kitchen. He went and sat in the living room and watched nothing on television for a while. He put on coffee at 10:45. At 11:03, headlights swept across the front window. He had the door open before she got to the steps. Sienna came in, and she was not the used-up version from December. She was the wired, still-moving version, the version that had been running on the fuel of a problem to solve, and was now arriving at the moment when the problem had downshifted from emergency to manageable, and the adrenaline was starting to clear. She came in. She stood in his hallway and looked at him. Reeves thinks we can get the claim dismissed before it goes to discovery, she said. With Marcus's documentation and what we already have, we can make a compelling case that this is a coordinated bad faith effort and move to have it thrown out with sanctions against the plaintiff. Good, Cole said. It'll probably take another 6 weeks, maybe 8. Okay. I'm going to be difficult to reach sometimes, more than I already have been. I know, Cole said. I'm not keeping score. She looked at him. Something in the efficiency of the information transfer shifted, the professional layer thinning out. Underneath it, she looked tired in a specific way. Not the bone tired of December, but the tired of someone who has been having to be formidable for a long time and is currently standing in a hallway where they don't have to be. Are you angry at Marcus? She asked. Some, Cole said honestly. Not permanently. Me too. She let out a breath. He means well. He's just still learning how to be present without making it about his process, Cole said. Sienna looked at him. That's a precise way to put it. He's getting there. He is, she agreed. She came further into the house. She took off her coat. Cole hung it on the hook by the door and went to pour her coffee, and she followed him into the kitchen and sat at the table. The same table where Marcus had sat 2 hours earlier, where Emma had sat that morning eating cereal, where Cole had eaten 1,000 unremarkable meals alone over 4 years. She put her hands around the coffee mug. Cole, she said. He sat across from her. I want to say something, she said. And I want to say it before I'm too tired to say it right. Okay. She looked at her coffee, then at him. I've spent my entire adult life being competent in a way that made people feel like they didn't need to show up for me, like I had it handled. And I did have it handled. But she stopped. There's a difference between handling things because you're capable and handling things because you've decided you can't count on people to handle them with you. Cole was quiet. "You're the first person in a very long time," she said, "who shows up before I ask, who calls instead of waiting, who sits with me when I'm tired instead of needing me to be fine." She looked at him directly. "I don't know what to do with that. I'm still figuring it out. But I needed to say it out loud because I've been carrying it for weeks and it's—" She stopped again, exhaled. "It's a lot." Cole looked at her across the table. This woman who ran a $4 billion company and had gone to war with a bad faith legal claim and asked if Marcus was okay when Marcus confessed to using her, and who sat in his kitchen at 11 at night with her hands around a coffee mug, saying she didn't know what to do with being cared for. "You don't have to do anything with it," he said. "You just have to let it be there." She looked at him for a long moment. "That sounds easier than it is," she said. "I know. I've been working on it too." The kitchen was quiet. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere upstairs, Gerald the rabbit was doing whatever rabbits did in the middle of the night, which in Gerald's case was apparently rearranging things. "Stay," Cole said. "It's late, and Emma won't be home until morning, and you don't have to drive." Sienna considered it for a second. Not the proposal, he understood, but the act of accepting it. The deliberate choice to not be somewhere alone when being somewhere alone wasn't necessary. "Okay," she said. Cole got her a blanket from the hall closet, and she fell asleep on the couch before midnight, and he sat in the chair across from her for a while before going to bed himself. The lamp was low. The house was warm. Through the window, the street was empty, and the February dark was doing its usual cold work. Cole sat in the chair and looked at the woman asleep on his couch and thought about Marcus's voice that morning. "Go be with her, that's what I'm telling you." And about Emma's voice 2 weeks ago when she'd said she's not trying to be impressive like it was the most natural observation in the world. He thought about Lauren. He thought about her the way he'd learned to, not with the acute grief of the early years, not with guilt, but with the steady, quiet ache of genuine loss that doesn't go away but changes shape over time. He thought she would have had opinions about Sienna, sharp, accurate ones. She would have liked her, he thought, and she would have had about 6 pointed questions for Cole about what he was waiting for. He went to bed. He slept without difficulty for the first time in 2 weeks. In the morning, Emma came home at 9 and found Sienna at the kitchen counter making coffee with the focused expression of someone still operating at 60%, and Emma assessed the situation with her characteristic lateral intelligence and said, very calmly, "Do you want me to make you eggs? I'm actually pretty good at eggs." Sienna looked at her. "You don't have to do that." "I know," Emma said. "I want to." She was already opening the refrigerator. "Dad makes them too runny. I do mine right." Cole, coming down the stairs at this moment, caught Sienna's expression from the hallway. That same briefly undone look he'd seen when Emma had taken her hand outside the museum, the look that got there before she could manage it. He stopped on the stairs and let the moment be what it was. Emma made eggs. They were, in fact, cooked correctly. The three of them ate breakfast in the February morning in the kitchen of the imperfect house, and outside the window the city was doing its gray and ordinary Saturday thing, and nothing was resolved yet. The legal fight had weeks left, Marcus was still finding his way, and Cole and Sienna were still in the early, unsteady terrain of two people building something without a blueprint. But the table was full, and the eggs were good. And for right now, in this specific morning, that was not nothing. That was, in fact, quite a lot. The court filing came on a Wednesday morning in late March. Sienna's attorney called her at 8:47 while she was in the back of a car heading to her office, and Cole was in his kitchen reading the news when his phone buzzed with a text from her that said only, "Motion to dismiss granted. Sanctions approved against plaintiff. It's over." He sat with that for a moment. Then he typed back, "Come over tonight." 3 minutes passed. "I'll bring food," she replied. She arrived at 6:30 with Thai takeout and the particular kind of exhaustion that follows not the crisis itself, but the moment the crisis ends. The specific deflation of a body that has been running on urgency and suddenly has nothing left to run on. She came in and set the food on the counter and stood in the kitchen, and Cole looked at her and she looked at him, and neither of them said anything important for a moment. Then Emma came in from the living room, registered the takeout bags, and said, "Pad seat you?" With the directness of someone who has priorities. "Pad seat you," Sienna confirmed. "You're my favorite person," Emma said, and disappeared back into the living room to clear her Lego project off the coffee table. Sienna looked at Cole. "She says that to anyone who brings the right food," Cole said. "I know, I don't care." Sienna sat down at the kitchen table with the boneless relief of someone who has finally been allowed to stop standing. "It's done," she said. "The sanctions mean Harlow eats the legal fees, ours and his own. It's not a number that hurts him personally, but it makes the strategy expensive on record, which means he can't quietly run it again somewhere else without it following him." And the board? Settled. The two members he'd been working on, once the claim collapsed and the documentation came out establishing the coordination, they came back around. One of them called me personally to apologize. She paused. I accepted the apology and told him I'd be watching his votes more carefully going forward. Cole almost smiled. How did he take that? Like a man who understood he'd been warned. She pulled a container of food toward her and opened it. Reeves said it's one of the cleaner takedowns he's seen. His word, not mine. You earned it. My team earned it. I just refused to fold. She looked up. And Marcus's emails were the thing that cracked it open. Without those, we'd have won eventually, but it would have taken longer and cost more and given Harlow more time to do damage. Cole nodded. I told him that, Sienna said. I called him this afternoon. How did that go? She was quiet for a second, opening another container. It went, honestly, which is more than I expected. She looked at the food in front of her. He said he was sorry. The full version, not the managed version. And I believed him. I don't think Marcus is a bad person, Cole. I think he's someone who spent a long time not knowing how to be in the same room as his own feelings, and it made him sideways, Cole said. Sideways, she agreed. But he's working on it. I could hear it. Cole had spoken to Marcus the previous week, a long call, the kind they hadn't had in months, that had covered the therapy he'd started in February. Some things from his past he was finally putting in front of someone qualified to help him sort them out, and a tentative, careful hopefulness about what came next for him personally. Marcus had sounded like someone in the early stages of a renovation. Not done, not even close to done, but with the walls open and a plan in hand. It was the best version of Marcus that Cole had heard in years. They ate dinner, the three of them, with Emma providing ongoing commentary about a book she'd been reading and a strongly held theory that the cafeteria at her school had been getting progressively worse since October in a pattern that suggested systemic decline rather than isolated incidents. Sienna engaged with this theory seriously and suggested Emma document the evidence, and Emma's eyes lit up in the way they did when someone gave her permission to investigate something formally. After dinner, after Emma was in bed, they sat on the back porch with the remains of the evening, jackets on, the March air still carrying real cold even though the worst of winter was technically past. The yard was wet from earlier rain, the radiator ticked inside. A neighbor's dog was making a periodic statement about something across the back fence. I want to say something, Cole said. Sienna looked at him. Okay. He'd been working on how to say this for a while, but not scripting it because he didn't work that way, but sitting with the shape of it until it felt like something he could say out loud without it becoming more or less than what it was. 4 years ago, he said, when Lauren died, I made a decision that I wasn't fully aware I was making. I decided that the part of my life that was for me, not for Emma, not for work, not for anyone else, that part was finished. Like it had a natural end and I'd reached it. And I told myself that was okay, that surviving and taking care of Emma was enough. He stopped for a second. I got pretty good at believing that. Sienna didn't say anything. She was listening in the full way she had. No filling in, no preemptive comfort, just presence. And then Marcus set up that dinner, Cole said, and I almost didn't go, and every reasonable part of me said it was a terrible idea for about 11 different reasons, and I went anyway, and you were there. He looked at her. And you were the first person in 4 years who made me feel like the part of my life that was for me wasn't finished, Like maybe I'd just paused it without realizing. Sienna was quiet. I'm not finished, Cole said. I don't think I've been for a while. I just needed someone to make that impossible to ignore. Sienna looked at him for a long moment. The porch light was doing its same thing with the shadows between them. She had her hands in her jacket pockets, and she was looking at him the way she looked at things she was deciding to trust. I spent 3 years in a marriage, she said slowly, feeling like I was disappearing. And then I spent 8 months after it ended, feeling like I'd gotten myself back, but wasn't entirely sure what to do with myself now that I had her. She paused. And then there was a blind date that I almost walked out of, and I sat down instead, and the person across the table just talked to me. Like what I said mattered, like he was actually tracking it. She stopped. That sounds like a small thing. It's not a small thing, Cole said. No, she agreed. It's really not. She reached across and took his hand. Not the way he'd taken hers on the porch in November. Tentative, comfort offering. The way of someone claiming something they've decided belongs to them. I don't need this to be simple, she said. I know it isn't. There's Emma, and there's Marcus, and there's the fact that we are genuinely complicated people with real histories, and none of that is going to stop being true. She looked at him. But I want to be here. I want to be in this with you, with Emma, with the weird geometry of all of it. I'm not saying that because it's easy. I'm saying it because the alternative is going back to a life where I'm very successful and very alone, and I've already done that, and I know exactly what it feels like, and it doesn't feel like enough anymore. Cole looked at her. Stay, he said. Not the way he'd said it in February, the practical version. It's late, the roads are wet. The other version, the one that meant something larger and less time-bounded. Sienna understood. Okay, she said. The neighbor's dog made one final pronouncement and went quiet. The yard sat in its wet March stillness. Inside the house, his daughter slept without defenses, and a rabbit with too many names performed unknown nocturnal activities, and the kitchen still smelled faintly of Thai food, and everything was imperfect and present and real. Cole held her hand and didn't say anything else, because there wasn't anything else that needed saying tonight. Spring came in pieces the way it does in Seattle. A warm week followed by cold rain followed by something that couldn't decide what it was. By April, the yard had acquired opinions in the form of things growing where Cole hadn't planted them, and Emma had developed a new interest in botany that was temporarily coexisting with deep-sea biology in her personal canon of obsessions. Sienna was there on the weekends, mostly, occasionally weeknights. She kept her apartment. Cole hadn't suggested otherwise, and she hadn't offered, and they both understood without discussing it that the pace of the thing was its own kind of intelligence, that it knew how fast to move better than either of them did if they just let it. What changed was the texture of the house. Cole noticed it in small ways. The coffee at Sienna's preferred strength appearing in the cabinet next to his own. A book she'd been reading left on the side table with a bookmark in it. Emma consulting Sienna's opinions on things with the casual certainty of someone who has quietly added a person to their inner council without formal announcement. The three of them had a rhythm in the kitchen on Sunday mornings that no one had designed. Cole on eggs, Emma on toast, Sienna on coffee, and the particular running commentary she'd developed about whatever she'd been reading that week, and Emma firing back at the commentary with her own positions, and Cole in the background holding the whole thing together by just being in the room. He thought, on those mornings, about what surviving had actually cost him. Not the dramatic costs, not Lauren's death, not the grief, not the years of particular loneliness, the quiet costs. The way he'd stopped expecting anything from his own life beyond continuity. The way he'd let the house become a machine for keeping Emma safe rather than a place where they both actually lived. He'd done it out of love, which made it hard to see as a failure, but it had been a kind of failure. A slow, well-intentioned withdrawal from the possibility that his life was still in progress. He was in progress again. He didn't know exactly when it had happened. Probably not at one moment. Probably in accumulation, all those evenings and Saturday mornings and long conversations that had, gradually, rebuilt something in him that he'd quietly dismantled after Lauren died. The belief that the present was worth occupying fully. That wanting things wasn't reckless, that his daughter deserved to see him living rather than just enduring. Emma, he suspected, had known before he did. The conversation with Marcus happened in April, on a Saturday afternoon when Emma was at a school event and Sienna was in New York for 2 days of board meetings. Cole had gone to meet Marcus at a coffee place in Capitol Hill, neutral ground, which was something they'd never needed before but that now seemed like the right instinct. Marcus looked better than he had in months. Not repaired, that was too clean a word, but less compressed, like something that had been held at pressure had been slowly released. He'd been in therapy for 8 weeks. He'd started running again, which he'd given up sometime during the company years. He looked like a man who had made peace with something and was still in the process of learning what that peace required of him day to day. They talked for 2 hours. About everything and nothing. About Marcus's therapy, which he discussed with more openness than Cole had expected, not because Marcus had become emotionally fluent overnight, but because he'd apparently decided that performing composure around Cole specifically was a waste of both their time. About a new project Marcus was considering, smaller than his previous company, something in clean energy infrastructure. About Emma's expanding vocabulary of strong opinions. About what it had actually been like for Marcus to be married to Sienna, the real version, not the post-divorce diplomatic one. "I made her lonely," Marcus said, not with self-flagellation, with the specific flatness of a thing that has been turned over enough times to be stated plainly. "I didn't intend to, but intention and impact are different things, and the impact was that she spent 3 years with someone who was technically present and actually somewhere else most of the time. And she's the kind of person who knows how to be alone but shouldn't have to be alone in her own marriage, you know?" "Yeah," Cole said. "You don't do that," Marcus said. "I've watched you with her. You're there. Even when you're not saying anything, you're there. It's a different way of being with someone." He looked at his coffee. "I think I'm learning it in therapy. How to be in a room without being in the next room too." A pause. "It's harder than it sounds." "I know," Cole said. "I spent 4 years being in a room without being in my own life. Different version, same problem." Marcus looked at him. "How did you get out of it?" Cole thought about it honestly. "Someone made it impossible to keep doing it," he said, "and I had to decide whether to be honest about that or pretend I didn't notice." Sienna, and Emma, in her way. Emma never let me pretend. Marcus smiled at that. A real one. She's going to be terrifying when she's grown. She's already terrifying. She's 8. They sat with their coffee in the April afternoon light coming through the window, and it was, Cole thought, the most comfortable they'd been together in months. Not because anything had been resolved into neatness, but because they'd both stopped pretending that neatness was available and learned to sit with the actual shape of things instead. "Are you okay?" Cole asked. "Actually," Marcus thought about it. "Getting there," he said. "I think I've been not okay for longer than I knew. Before the divorce, before the company even. Just," he made a gesture. "Running. And telling myself the running was the point. Therapy's been..." He stopped. Started again. "It's been clarifying, which is not always comfortable." "No," Cole said. "It isn't. My therapist asked me last week what I actually want," Marcus said. "Not what I'm building toward, not what I'm protecting against, not what I feel like I should want, what I actually want." He shook his head. "I didn't have an answer." "Do you now?" "I'm working on one." He looked up. "I think I want to be in a room and mean it. That's the start of it." A pause. "I want to be where I am." Cole looked at his best friend. "That's enough to start with," he said. Emma asked the question on a Friday night in early May. They were at the kitchen table after dinner, the 3 of them, which had become the ordinary configuration in a way that had happened so gradually none of them had marked the moment it became ordinary. Sienna was helping Emma with a school project about ecosystems, and Cole was cleaning up from dinner, and the kitchen had the specific warmth of a room where people are comfortable enough together to not need to perform anything. Emma had been quiet for a few minutes, which with Emma usually meant she was building toward something. Cole noticed it. Sienna noticed it. Emma looked up from her project. "Are you going to be our family now?" she asked. She said it directly, looking at Sienna, in the tone of someone asking about a plan, not pleading, not manipulative, just a person who wants to understand how things are going to go. The kitchen went very still. Cole stopped what he was doing. He didn't turn around yet. He stood at the counter and let the question exist in the room. Sienna set down her pencil. She looked at Emma, and Cole knew without seeing it exactly what was on her face, because he'd seen that face enough times to know what it did when something got to her before she could prepare for it. The briefly open, unmanaged version, the look that arrived before the composure could. "I want to be," Sienna said. Her voice was steady, but the steadiness was deliberate. "That's what I want. If you want that too." Emma considered this with her usual seriousness, the way she considered everything that mattered, like she was weighing the information against something internal. "I do," Emma said. And then, with the maddening practicality that was the most Emma thing in the world, "You should probably talk to my dad about the official part, though. He's in charge of logistics." Sienna made a sound that was almost a laugh and was definitely also something else. She pressed her fingers briefly to her mouth. Cole turned around. He looked at Sienna. Sienna looked at him with her eyes bright and her composure doing its best and her mouth still in that almost laugh configuration, and Emma had already gone back to her ecosystem project with the satisfaction of someone who had raised a point and received sufficient acknowledgement of it. "Logistics," Cole said. "I've been advised," Sienna said, "to talk to the person in charge of logistics." Emma takes process seriously. "I've noticed." Cole crossed to the table and sat down. He looked at Sienna across the papers and the markers and the ecosystem diagrams and his daughter's quietly bent head. "I don't have a speech," he said. "I want to be honest about that up front. I don't need a speech. I know what I want," he said. "I've known for a while. I kept thinking there'd be a right moment, and then I realized I was doing the thing I used to do. Waiting until it was safe. Until the variables were resolved." He stopped. "The variables are never all resolved." "No," Sienna said. "They're not." "So," he looked at her. "You're already here. You're already in this house, in Emma's life, in my—" He paused. "You're already the thing that changed what this place feels like. I don't want to keep treating that like something we're building toward. I want to treat it like something we're already in." Sienna looked at him. "Are you asking me something?" she said, not coy, genuine, wanting to be clear about what was being said. "I'm saying I want you here," Cole said. "Not visiting, here. And when you're ready to say something back about that, I'll be listening." Emma's pencil scratched against paper. Sienna looked at Cole for a long moment. "I'm ready now," she said. "I've been ready for a while. I was waiting for you to be." "I'm here," Cole said. "I know," she said. "That's why." Some things resolve cleanly, and some things resolve in the way that real life does, in increments, without a single moment that you can point to as the definitive ending. What happened over the months that followed was the second kind. Sienna's apartment lease ended in July, and she didn't renew it. There was a weekend of moving that was chaotic in the specific way that combining two households is always chaotic. Not enough drawer space, a disagreement about where certain books should live that revealed each of them had stronger opinions about book organization than they'd known. Gerald the rabbit registering a formal protest about the disruption by rearranging his enclosure 3 times in one day. Emma supervised the whole operation with a clipboard she'd made from printer paper and a binder clip, which was either very helpful or not helpful at all, depending on which task you were trying to do. The house reorganized around 3 people. It took time. There were adjustments that required adjustment, small frictions that required actual conversation instead of just absorption. Sienna had spent enough time on her own to have a strong sense of how she needed a space to function, and Cole had spent 4 years calibrating everything to Emma and his own particular kind of order, and bringing those 2 systems together was not always graceful. But they worked at it. That was the thing. They both showed up to the friction instead of waiting for the other person to smooth it over. Cole had never been with someone who argued with him in the productive way, who could sit across from him and say, "This isn't working for me," without it being an accusation, who could hear "that doesn't work for me" without it becoming a wound. It was new. He didn't take it for granted. Marcus came to dinner in August. It was the first time he'd been to the house since Sienna had moved in, and Cole had not been certain how it would land until Marcus walked through the door and looked around at the space, at Sienna's books on the shelf, and Emma's drawings on the refrigerator, and the general lived-in texture of three people sharing a house. And something in his face settled into something like peace. Not performed peace, the kind that comes when you've worked through a thing enough to actually feel it from the other side. He and Sienna talked for a long time after dinner, while Emma showed Cole a new stop-motion animation she'd been making with her phone. Cole watched Emma's animation and listened to the two of them from across the room. Not tracking the words, but the quality of it, the ease, the absence of any of the old accumulated weight. They sounded like two people who had a history and had chosen to make it into something livable rather than something to manage around. Marcus left at 10. At the door, he looked at Cole and didn't say much, just put a hand on his shoulder for a moment, the way they did sometimes instead of the things that didn't need to be said out loud. Cole watched him walk to his car. Then he went back inside to his house. The Christmas tree that year leaned to the left. It was Emma's doing. She had strong opinions about which tree to get and had selected this particular one on the grounds that it had character, which Cole had taken to mean that it was imperfect in ways she found appealing. It did lean. He'd done what he could with the stand, but the lean was, at this point, structural. They decorated it anyway. Emma had a theory that ornaments worked better on a leaning tree because it created visual interest, which Sienna had engaged with seriously and Cole had chosen not to examine too closely. It was Christmas Eve. Emma was not asleep yet, despite being told twice that she should be, and Cole could hear her moving around upstairs in the way that she thought was quiet and was not. Sienna was in the kitchen. She'd been helping Cole with the prep for tomorrow, and they'd both been at it for an hour, and the kitchen had the particular organized chaos of people who are attempting something slightly beyond their skill level and committed enough to see it through. There was a pie that was in the oven and was either going to be good or was going to require a story about how it was supposed to look like that. Cole came into the kitchen and stood next to Sienna at the counter, and she was reading a recipe on her phone with the focused look she brought to anything she was trying to learn. And he stood beside her and looked at the annotated disaster of the counter and thought about the man who had stood at this same counter 4 years ago in the particular silence of someone who had stopped expecting anything from his own life. He was not that man anymore. He didn't think he'd been that man for a while, actually. He'd been becoming something else for a year, and he hadn't noticed it the way you don't notice most important changes. Not in a moment, but in aggregate, looking back from somewhere further along and realizing the distance you've covered. "The pie smells right," Sienna said. "Yeah. I think it's actually going to be okay." "Don't say that, you'll jinx it." "Do you believe in jinxes?" "I believe in not tempting things that don't need to be tempted." She looked at him sideways with an expression that was partly amused and partly the thing underneath the amusement, the layer that was there most consistently when she thought he wasn't tracking it. The layer that was just glad, simply and specifically glad. "You know what Emma told me last week?" Sienna said. "I never know what Emma is going to say. She said that the thing she likes best about our family is that nobody pretends." Sienna set her phone down. "She said some of her friends' families pretend everything is fine all the time, and it makes the house feel fake. And ours doesn't feel fake." Cole was quiet for a moment. "She noticed everything," he said. "She does." Sienna looked at him. "She's right, though. We don't pretend. It took me a long time to be in something where that was true." Cole looked at her. The truth was that he hadn't set out to build anything in particular. He'd just tried, at each moment, to be honest about where he was and what he could offer, and to be present enough that the people in front of him knew they were being seen. He hadn't done it perfectly. There had been moments of withdrawal, moments of overcorrection, moments where he'd been so conscious of not repeating old patterns that he'd created new problems. He was not a perfected version of anything. He was a man who had lost everything that defined him and rebuilt around what remained, and what remained had turned out to be enough to build something real from. That was the thing he understood now that he hadn't understood 4 years ago in the quiet of the house after Lauren died. That surviving was not the same as living, and that the difference between them was not energy or courage or any of the things he'd thought it was. It was willingness. The willingness to let what was happening actually happen to you, to let people in close enough to matter, to accept that loss doesn't end the story. It just changes what the story is about. His story had been about loss for a long time. Then it had been about holding things together. And now it was about something he didn't have one clean word for. The specific, complicated daily work of a life that included joy and friction and an 8-year-old with a clipboard and a woman who had learned to be in a room and mean it and a best friend who was learning the same thing and a house that finally sounded, most mornings, like a place where people wanted to be. Upstairs, Emma gave up any pretense of stealth and could be heard padding across her floor to her bed. "She's not asleep," Sienna said. "She won't be for a while. Should one of us go up?" "Give her 15 minutes. She'll settle." Sienna nodded. She leaned against the counter. Cole stood beside her. The oven hummed. The leaning tree in the living room held its lights and its character and its crooked ornaments. "I want to tell you something," Cole said. Sienna looked at him. "I spent a long time thinking that what I felt after Lauren died, the quiet, the narrowing down, all of it, I thought that was grief turning into acceptance. And maybe part of it was, but part of it was fear. Fear that if I wanted something again and lost it, I wouldn't come back from it the second time." Sienna didn't say anything. "I'm not afraid of that anymore," Cole said. "Not because I think loss can't happen again. I know it can. But because I understand now that the answer to that fear isn't to stop wanting things. The answer is to be someone who can hold what matters without holding it so tightly that you stop being able to feel it." He looked at her. "You did that for me," he said. "You and Emma, both. You made me want things again, and I'm not going to be someone who takes that for granted." Sienna looked at him for a long moment. Her eyes were bright. She didn't do anything with it, didn't blink it away or compose her face. She just stood with it, the way she'd learned, or maybe remembered, to stand with things that were real. "I want to grow old in an imperfect house," she said quietly. "I want Sunday mornings in a kitchen that's too small for 3 people. I want Emma to have someone who shows up. I want to be the person who shows up. I spent so long being competent at everything alone that I forgot that wasn't the same as being okay." She stopped. "I'm better than okay now. That's you. That's this." Cole reached up and put his hand along the side of her face, and she leaned into it slightly, just slightly, the way you lean into something when you trust it to hold. "Merry Christmas," he said. "Merry Christmas," she said. From upstairs, Emma's voice came down with the terrible timing of an 8-year-old who has excellent instincts for dramatic moments. "I can hear you two down there, and I'm trying to sleep." Cole dropped his hand. Sienna pressed her mouth together hard. "Then sleep," Cole called up. "I'm trying." "Try harder." A pause. "Is the pie done yet?" "Emma, I'm just asking." "Go to sleep." Another pause, longer. "Okay," Emma said, with the specific tone of someone granting a significant concession. The house went quiet. Cole looked at Sienna. Sienna looked at Cole. And in the kitchen of the leaning treehouse, with the pie in the oven and the snow starting outside the window that neither of them had noticed yet, 2 imperfect people who had found each other by accident and chosen each other on purpose stood together in the ordinary, extraordinary middle of a life that was still going, still uncertain, still full of things that would require work and honesty and the daily decision to be present. There was no perfect version of this. There never had been. There was only this version, real, impermanent, theirs. It was enough. It was in fact more than enough. It was everything.